to Community Talk. The Community Talk is put on by Nova Scotia Black Men's Health League, along with Nova Scotia Black Women's Alliance. Today we have Conrad Grosse. I'll give you a little background about Conrad. Conrad hails from Cherrybrook. He has passionately dedicated over 35 years to mentoring and tutoring people of African descent. His work of inspiring individuals to discover their strengths involves people of all ages. As a mentor, Conrad listens to sports and teaches youth life skills to discover who they are. As a tutor, he assists students in math, science, and technology. Additionally, Conrad helped establish successful youth drop-in programs and summer camps in the community. What he's most proud of is that all of this was accomplished by volunteering. Thus proven, when there's a need in the community, the village finds a way. So some etiquette for the Zoom tonight. All Zoom talks will be recorded. If people are not comfortable discussing things while being recorded, please turn off the video portion of your Zoom so your face is not visible. If you have questions, you can put questions in the chat and I will respond to them via Conrad accordingly. Other than that, we ask that everyone put their computers or phones on mute while he speaks, and please enjoy Conrad's speech. Thank you, Conrad Grosse.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne, and good evening to everybody out there. Thank you for giving me your time, lending me your ear. My name is Conrad Grosse, and I help students to overcome their fears of learning, especially in the fields of mathematics and technology. This evening, I'm going to talk about how I use 3 simple yet profound questions to help me to become a better tutor. And before I go on, I just want to say that the topic that you've seen on the emails that went out, for unforeseen reasons, I had to change the topic. So being as it is, I had to change it. I had to change it up. So I'm a little bit off-centered, but off by my center, Afrocentric and all. So let me begin talking to you about the presentation for tonight. And I talked about the 3 questions, and the 3 questions, I think that they're questions that were powerful and impactful for me. And the questions, they provided me with my identity, my purpose, and my destiny. So what are the 3 questions? The 3 questions are the I am questions. And those 3 questions are, who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? And when we're serving the community, I believe it's very important that we show up at the best we can of who we are, because that's the statement that other people get from us, okay? And we're all working on these things every day, but we try to deliver from the best of who we are. And so let me share with you how these questions have made me a better mentor and tutor. So who am I? Well, let's start with my parents. I looked at their values, their attitudes, their traditions, who were their parents, and that solidifies who I am, okay? And also my community, my culture, and what are my origins? And we trace our origins back to Africa, and you know, there are going to be some gaps there because of the history that was wiped out for us. But be it as it may, my spirituality becomes important then. My connection to an entity greater than I am, because that's where it started. That's where it all started at. So if I can base myself back to whom created me, then that's how I deliver. That's where I come from, and that should be the story that I pass on as people come in contact with me. You know, one of the things about our backgrounds may not be, they may not be perfect. Our backgrounds are blemished for sure, and mine the same as everybody else's. But you know, the unblemished backgrounds, and especially when we look at the African diaspora and how we came here to this country, that's the blemish. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be our life. History is history. We look back to history so that we learn from history, but we don't stay in history. And if I may, I would like to share a story about this group of boys, and one boy in particular. They were in school. They were between 9 and 10 years old. And when they were in school, during lunchtime, the boys and the girls, they played this game of tag. And as they were playing this game of tag, they got so involved in the game that they forgot about the lunchtime bell ring. So the lunchtime bell rang for them to let them know that lunch was over and the noon session was starting. They were late, and they were a few minutes late getting back. They all got back in the class, got seated in the class. They expected the teacher to say something. The teacher just didn't say anything. They all sat down. Moments later, an announcement comes over the PA system, and the PA system calls out these 4 to 5 boys, and they're all called to the office. And as they're going to the office, the boys were thinking to themselves, gosh, we get called down to the office for being a few minutes late. But they go down the office, and when they go to the office, they're told that they're not to return back to the classroom, and that when the bus arrives in the afternoon, they would take them home and they were to remain in the office till then. So the boys all get on the bus. They don't really know much what's going on. They just know that they were either kicked out, suspended for being late, a couple minutes late at that. So one of the boys, as he jumped off the bus, his mother was waiting for him. And he remembers the look on his mother's face, and his mother had this frightful embarrassment, shame look. And so the boy was puzzled by the fact that, hey, for late, it's just for being late, what was going on? So as a boy's mom told him that he would have to wait until his dad come home, work everything out. The boy was puzzled. All the boys went their separate ways. And so soon after, when the father came home, the boy was told that he had interfered with this girl, and it was serious. Interfering, the kids never knew what that meant. So they were told that they were to come back to the school on this particular night, and they would have a meeting to decide what was the next move. So when they came back to the school, they were greeted by the school superintendent, the principal of the school, a teacher of the school, the RCMP, and the Shelburne detention center employees from there. And so the boys looked at each other and they said to themselves, well, why all this? So at any rate, there was also, and I must note that the boys were all Black. And there was one white woman and one white man there, and apparently they were the parents of a girl. And then as the night went on, we found out that the girl was, as they said, raped by these boys. And so the police had their say, the superintendent had their say, and Shelburne was about to have the
Weird that
Shelburne.
I can't hear it without the fucking earphones in.
The Shelburne officials were about to have their say when one of the people in the crowd said, "What's going on here? These boys don't know they're behind from a hole in the ground. What would they know about raping? What would they know about sex at 9 and 10 years old?" So the man asked, he said, "So where is the one who's accusing?" And they said, well, they didn't, the parents spoke up and said they didn't want the girl to be there and that they were speaking on her behalf. So the man said, no, you have to get the accuser here, because if not, none of us will know what went on. So they get the girl. The man goes to the girl and he says, okay, look, I know this is hard for you, but we just want to know what really happened, because these boys are about to lose their life, because going to Shelburne, they're going to be there until they're 19, 20 years old. So the girl starts to cry and he says, okay, just calm down and just tell me what happened. So the girl utters nothing. So he asks again, he says, I asked you what happened. No reply. He asked again. So the girl says nothing. He said, well, if nothing happened, why are we here? And the girl said to everyone in the room, she said, I was late for going back after lunch. He said, okay, so what does that have to do with you being touched? She said, I wasn't touched. I was told to say that I was raped and that I would get off with not being penalized for being late going back for lunch. Now, of course, the night finished, the boys were sent back home. But can you imagine what was going through those boys' mind, the trauma that those boys had faced? And remember, the boys are 9 and 10 years old. And as we're in this particular time in history right now, where we're talking about Black Lives Matter. And these kind of things have been going on for a long time. So how could you explain how that boy would feel? What would go through these boys? Well, I can tell you, because I was one of those boys. And that was a defining moment in my life, in changing a direction and a path for me. But my life could have went a totally different way if it hadn't have been for the village. You know, we all say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, the village was at work in my life. The village was my parents, my siblings, my uncles, my aunts, other people in the community. Because for me, there were several times when I contemplated and tried suicide because of how that made me feel. But the important thing is that at any time, at specific times, the village would come and just say something kind and nice, not knowing what I was going through, because I would never tell them that I was thinking these things. And when the village would come and say these, the kindness and show affection, it gave purpose and meaning to life. And for that moment, you withdrew from what you were going to do. Young people usually, when they go through traumatic circumstances and experiences, they usually don't want to talk about it, or they don't tell people. They bottle it inside and they take it on as shame. And so it was very important for me that the village got involved. And that's the reason that I became a mentor and a tutor in the community. And I've been doing it for almost 40 years now. And so as I'm working with young people, my work is based on how I felt at that time, and through the years of me growing up in those youth years, and through the people who helped me find my way and my path. It's very important that we're able to answer those three questions. Who am I? What's my purpose? And my destiny. So who am I? It was through many of these people that I was able to discover who I was. Now, I wasn't sure of who I was, but they coddled me enough, gave me direction enough, listened to me enough so that I could find a way. And as I found a way and found a value in who I was, it began to open up for me the purpose. What was it that I was here for? You know, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And I began to find that with other people in the community, they would ask me to help them fix a car. They would ask me to, the elder people in the community, to paint their houses, and all of that. They were establishing value in me. They were investing in me. And as you invest in people, their value goes up. The story that talks about value, this man had, he received a promotion at work, and so he went out to celebrate. And so his friends took him out to celebrate. And as they're celebrating, you know, the night's going on, and he's eating, drinking, and having a really good time. So as the night dawned on, it's getting dark, getting late in the night, he says, I gotta leave. So as he steps out of the establishment, there just before his feet is a street person laying there, and he looks up at the man and he says, sir, do you have a few cents that you can spare for me to get a drink of coffee? So the man says to himself, oh, look, I got a promotion. It's not going to hurt me any. I had a good time. What could make my night better? So he goes in his pocket looking for some change. He looks all over his pockets, his jacket pocket, his pants pocket. He can't find any change. So he goes into his wallet and hoping that there would be some change there, or maybe a loony, a toonie. All he could find was $50. So he said, what the heck, I might as well give the $50 to him. He said, look, I'm doing pretty good. I got a promotion and all. So he pulls up the 50 and he hands it to the man. The man says, no, I can't accept that. I can't accept that. He said, no, I really want you to have it. He said, no, I can't accept that. I'm not worth $50 for me. And he says, no, I can't accept that. I just can't. He said, I don't feel like, he said, I'll do the wrong thing with it. He said, no, just take it. So the man said, no, I can't take it. So he drops the 50 and he says, look, do with it what you want. So he starts walking, and as he's walking, he hears footsteps. And then all of a sudden the man taps him on the shoulder. Man taps him on the shoulder. It's the guy. It's the street guy. And he says, here's your 50. I can't take this. Nobody's ever done this for me before. What are you trying to do to me? I know I'm not worth that. So the man says, you're not worth $50. It's only $50. So he says, look, see this 50 here? I'm going to roll it in my hand, crumble it up. Now take it. 50's bruised and battered. Take it. So the man looks at him and says, I can't accept it. So the man puts the 50 on the pavement, and he takes his foot and he grinds it into the pavement, tearing some parts of it. Then he pours his coffee on it and he puts it out in the street and allows some cars to run over it. He said, here, now this should do it. It's beaten, it's bruised, it's battered. Take it. The man says, no, I can't accept this. He said, why can't you accept this? He said, it doesn't matter what you do to the $50, it's still $50. And the man says, that's the point. The point is, I understand that you've had a horrendous life. I understand that things happen in your life. But like this $50, it doesn't really matter what has happened to you, what has been done to you, where you've been. If you find what you were created to be, who you are, you're still worth that 50. And isn't that the soul for us, is that I want to find my purpose. What gives me peace? What gives me joy? What gives me a sense of achievement? And it wasn't always easy to find those things, because most of the time what we do, we look to others to find our purpose. We try to imitate others for our purpose, but we never find that unique us until you find the proper people who will not settle for you being less in your life, will not settle for you playing small in your life. They see something special in you. And there was a teacher, math teacher, a little small woman. And I remember I was going to grade 10 at the time, and she was tiny, but boy, she was mighty, because I would see her dragging kids out of the classroom, and she was a whole lot of fun and all, but she did not take no mess. And as I walked into her class, she said, Grosse, oh, I know your sisters. Oh, you come from a very good family, very smart family. She said, oh, you're going to be a joy to have in the class. But she didn't know me. I was the clown. I was the one still trying to work my way out. And through the trauma that happened to me, trying to find some worth in me. And so I wasn't the person at that time, because I was just trying to find my way. And I recall being in her class the first day, and as I was leaving the class, she said, excuse me, you come back here for a minute. She said, I gave you one day. Tomorrow, when you come back to class, you come back as the person I expect you to be. You will not be in my class playing small. So I came back in the class a little fearful, but she's seen something in me. And as she's seen the something in me, she became very inspirational to me as, someone who I could look up to, someone who gave me the peace, the joy, the sense of achievement. I was feeling that in myself. And the teacher's name was Miss Valerie Miller. She left teaching and she went to law, and she became a Crown attorney in Ottawa or Toronto, it's somewhere. But at any rate, she was very inspirational to me. And so as I model after the people who gave it to me, I come to it from who I am, giving young people that. And so it's very important that we don't try to impress who we are on them. Allow young people to find out who they are, and we guide them. And as you find the who and the purpose, then your direction is already there for you. Because knowing who you are and what your purpose is, the rest of your life, you're working towards that destination. So those were all key and important things for me in my life. And it's one of the reasons why I tutor. It's one of the reasons why I'm a good listener, passionate, compassionate towards people. It's because you take the things that happen in your life, you take all of the things that were given to you in your life, and you give them back. And it's that village. And sometimes I look and I say, do we still exercise the model of the village that we often talk about? Because, you know, sometimes I notice, and some of the kids, some of the young people will say to me, you know, we almost feel invisible because we're not the smart kids. We're not the basketball players. We're not the soccer players. We're just ordinary. We're really nothing, and nobody even stops to help us. And those are the majority of the youth that I come into contact with. And many of them are just trying to find their way through. They're just trying to find, like Dorothy, their yellow brick road. And our job, whatever it might be, whatever capacity it might be, is to help them navigate that. And sometimes I fear that we put a lot of emphasis into the top students, and we tend to put a lot of emphasis in the ones who sort of have, you know, the behavioral issues, but there's others that get left out. And so we've got to be mindful that it's all of the students. And we don't want to divide people, because as you divide people, people begin to feel themselves of the unworthiness. They begin to seek value in other things. And that's, you know, and so for us, especially us working in the Black communities, we're very aware of what young people will face. I mean, there's a lot of marches out there now for Black Lives Matter. I hope we don't forget the seedlings. I hope we just don't focus on what has been done to us, because a lot of times when I'm looking in the media, social media, it's always another story about all of these stories about someone being accosted by the police, someone being put out of store. But the ones that they're talking about tend to be the older ones, which I'm not saying that they don't need our support, but I don't know what we're doing for the younger ones who are being affected by COVID, who have lost a good portion of their schooling this year. Some who never had accessibility, you know, never had access to Wi-Fi, access to devices to use. I worked with some of those students, and, you know, they felt so isolated. And I guess that's what we call it, isolation. But what will it be when they go back? What's our plan to help everyone in the community? You know, there's a saying I heard: if you want to produce better fruit, nourish the root. It's always the root of the tree. If the root is healthy, it produces better fruit. And sometimes we get too fixed on the fruit. And we all know what happens to the fruit. The fruit is luscious. The fruit is sweet, savory, but it's devoured very quickly. So we need to worry about the roots of people, and we'll make a better community. You know, these days it's not the first time in history that Black people had to go through the circumstances that are happening today. And I would dare say that 400 years ago, 300 years ago, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, even back to 60 or 70 years ago, the ones who laid the path for us, they've gone through a whole lot more. And they didn't have social media. They didn't have the withdrawal to march in the streets, because had they marched in the streets, they would have been no more. So they had to find another means in order to survive. They had to find another means so that we would still be here. What happened to that? We continue to ask the suppressor to let us free. We continue to ask the suppressor to open the door. We continue to ask the system that suppresses us to let us in. And it's fine. But what are we doing to build our own capacity? What are we doing to build up ourselves? What are we doing to build up that resiliency? What are we doing? And so those are some of the things that I think as mentors, tutors, we have to focus on. And it's all the part of the village that does that. So I've been blessed in my life to be able to share my stories, to share my gifts, to help and to direct a young person who will then take that and do the same. But we all have our part to play, and I don't want to diminish anyone out there who are doing what they need to do. I just don't want to see us leave out the young people, because right now they really need us. And because if they're going to go forward, they're going to need us to provide that mentorship, that education, that nurturing. They're going to need that. And they're not always going to tell you how they feel. They're not always going to tell you what's going through their mind. And you know, one of the biggest things is that those of you out there who are parents, your children will not tell you everything. Because if they tell you, they know mom and dad's going to go to the school, and their fear is that they'll explode the situation. They'll make it worse for them. So sometimes they keep it in. But it's also those other people in the village that helps. And so if we're those other people in the village, let's open our ears, let's open our hearts. Let's open up the compassion towards the young people. And I tell you, they'll always do us proud. It's such a feeling that when, after several years of working with a young person, and you've lost touch with them, and that young person can come back and say, you made a difference in my life, and because of what you did, I became this, I became that, and now I'm doing the same. That's legacy. And that's the way what we all do. And so, and it's that special feeling, isn't it? Because you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. We don't do it for those reasons, but it's nice to know that your work is never in vain. So keep working, keep pushing, and thank you for hearing me tonight. I'm sorry once again I didn't bring the topic that I wanted to bring, but thank you very much.
Where's your feet, Bobby? Pardon?
There's a note here. Thank you, Conrad. We need to love and respect each other.
Okay.
There's another question here or statement. This is not just a black female thing. There's a bias that does not see black men in the room either. Quite often when we speak, we will hear others repeat our points as theirs. It is noted as black planing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, very true. Very true. You know, and to build upon your point, very often when a black man speaks, I mean, that could be considered for women as well, that we're seen as being angry. And so, you know, like we're not to defend ourselves. So, you know, so, yeah, yeah, for sure. So, you know, but it all goes back to respecting and showing love to one another, because when we love one another, you know, I can bring because let me say this, it's amazing to me that if I go out and I get, say, an iPhone, I can tell everybody and how great the iPhone is. If I go to a restaurant and I get a tasty, yummy meal at a really good price, I go out and I tell everybody about the meal, and nobody ever says anything to me. But if I talk about the God that I believe in, and what the God that I believe in has elevated me and has given me joy, I'm told that I can't say that. So I'll only say this, that I've been taught to treat others as you treat yourself. Love others as you love yourself. And many times the things that we're doing to others, we've already done to ourselves. So that would be my answer.
What have they not stolen from us and claimed as theirs?
Well, you know, they haven't stole our pride. They haven't stole our freedom. That's what we give. That's what we give them. Haile Selassie, what was his quote? Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but us can free our minds. And so that's what they haven't taken from us. And that's what they're still trying to get, by the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, the forum is open for questions and discussions. Please feel free.
Hey, Mr. Grosse, I see that you work with individual. I mean, during your ALP, you work with you know, young men from the street, quote unquote. How do you deal with it, man? How do you just not say I give up?
Part of it is that there were people who didn't give up on me. And I'm very thankful that they didn't, because there were times when I pushed people and pushed people and pushed people. And had they not, the people, especially, you know, especially your mom never gives up on you, never gives up on you. And so it's people sticking by you, and that compassion resonates onto other people. And you also see a light in the person. You don't see their action, you see the things that they want to be. And so that's what you build on. And that's what I build on.
Statement here. Going back is where we need to start. Years pass, there was the movement There was movements, cultural Scotian movements. Stop Black on Black crime. Each one teach one. Older blacks correcting younger blacks, and younger blacks being made to respect older blacks.
Yeah, there's a lot of movements, and as we know, like if I could liken that to bad habits, many times with bad habits, we like it could be substance, it could be nutrition, it could be a lot of things. We try to deal with the habit, but it seems the habit comes back. And it's our dedication, our discipline, and these are things that we just have to keep doing it. Like the answer that I gave about working with someone who was involved in crime is or like myself, is that people stuck with me. And I think we have to stick with it and not give up, because sometimes we're probably so close to a breakthrough, and that's when we kind of give up. And we've got to remember too, we're doing this for ourselves, and we're not doing it for the greater community, because if we do it by the community, and when the community stops its support, and I guarantee you, the community, the greater community out there, this is a fad. This is a fad for them. When this fad is over, they're going to relax. And so when they relax, we've got to keep it going forward. And so I think we just have to be persistent and get more people involved.
As a community, what should we do to help our Black kids excel on the scale, the learning scale? Because I mean, I've been seeing a lot of our Black kids either in IPP, not graduating, dropping out at grade 10. How can we, as leaders, encourage these individuals?
I love community schooling. There are several, there are different ethnicities who have moved into the HRM area. And one of the things that they do on Saturdays, they go to school, to the public schools during the week, but on Saturday they have their own Saturday school where they're answering those three questions: who am I? What is my purpose? And through that, they find their destiny. Because sometimes in the school, well, very often in the school system, students lose their way. Like in the students that I've worked with, one of the things that I noticed in the beginning when I'm starting to work with them is this bravado that I can do it, this overconfidence. I can do it. It's easy. I can do it. But they don't do it. And one of the reasons why they don't do it is because of failure. They don't want to look like a failure in front of others. And so that's one of the reasons why I like working in the community. I try to keep students away from out of the environments that they're in every day. I try to work with them. Like, I love working in the cultural center because that's their identity. They see their identity and they feel at peace. They're sitting on their own sacred ground. It's theirs. And so they begin to blossom their own identity from that. And, our children have their own unique way of learning. And if schools, because schools cater to the majority, because they have to, when we get them in our communities, we can teach them to learn. Because, there's one thing and this baffles me, is that, you'll hear teachers or sometimes say that, oh, that child failed, that child failed. I've never worked with a child that failed. I've worked with children where I failed to reach them, but I've never worked with a child that failed. And part of the role of tutoring, of educating, I believe, is to learn the ways in which to teach that person, because it's like a language. We're trying to communicate. It's all about communication.
Can we address that? The lack of respect for the elders in our community? Is this seen as one of the results of the colonization of us as a people? And how do we begin the path to decolonization? I ask this to be addressed from a Scotian point of view.
From a Scotian point of view. Okay, well, I noticed that the lack of respect for our elders. And, I'm going to kind of deflect this just a little bit, and you'll see where I'm coming from. One of the things that I hear so often in our communities is how we talk about each other. Like, I will hear or overhear people say, well, what does he know about this? And where did he get that from? And how does he know that? And they're saying it to a child who's coming to me for tutoring. Now, do you think that child is going to respect me when a grown-up in the community is saying that to them? And so I have to work double hard to try to convince that child now that I know what I know, because children are impressionable. And so when we kill each other with words, and it's ironic that, we say, why the black on black killing? I mean, like, it's no different than white on white. I mean, but we sometimes in our community see people who know each other violating each other. But I say, when people come to me and they say that to me, I say, well, aren't we doing the same with our mouth? Because we kill people with words. We assassinate people with words. And so we've got to be mindful that there are ears always listening. Say something kind, say something nice, or say nothing at all. Because your words and our words are impactful and people are listening. So I think we've got to show respect for each other. I think that's where it starts. And definitely the colonization, where we tend to look at the European way as being the right way, while we neglect, the traditions that we were all born with and that we grew up with. I think that's a major problem.
How do we get past the divide and conquer that is destroying us? North Preston, East Preston, Africville, Hammonds Plains, African, Scotian, Haitian, the lack of respect for elders. I correct it there as a teaching moment.
Yeah. I mean, you're in the community, like I'm in the community, and that's a real sore spot. And it always comes back to loving ourselves as we love our neighbor. And it's always going to come back to that. And so being kind to ourselves, we will diminish those things that are done. I mean, like, I'm a man in my 50s, and I recall, a switch happening, let's say 25, 30 years ago, where it seemed like we lost respect for community. Anything that was outside the community was better than what the community had. I remember, us poking fun of each other for what we lacked. And while you sat there and you laughed with the people, you were feeling degraded. And so it left a bitter taste. And so when people are hurt, people look for a place to displace their hurt. And sometimes that hurt is, oftentimes that hurt is to the ones who are most close to them. Because, it's unfortunate, but that's what happens. When we're hurting, we strike out. And particularly the young Black males, there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger there, and it can be triggered. And when it's triggered, the anger is hurt, the shame, and so we've got to stop the hurt and the shame, and we've got to stop hurting each other. And it's so complicated. It's easy, but yet it's complicated. And but that's something that we all need to work for. And I think I would say that I would like to see the community do more from a community point of view. We tend to take our community events outside of the community. We tend not to do much in the community. It's good to take things outside of the community, but I think we've got to go back to the community. I recall us having there was a Black hockey league in the Prestons. There was a Black baseball league in the Prestons. And it was such camaraderie. And I think we need to get back to some of those things. And of course, the church, right?
I think the questions there in the thing are towards Dayton.
Okay.
From Harriet, from Jacqueline. Yeah.
Okay. Where
any more questions or discussions? Anybody? Does anybody have any more questions? Or
Conrad, as a learned scholar, what do we need to do? What do you need to do to help young Black up and coming individuals become teachers? Because I mean, right now we're lacking Black teachers in our schools, and also, and when with the Black teachers that we have, they're being sent like further out in rural Nova Scotia to teach instead of urban Nova Scotia. What are some things that we need to do, and how can we advocate as community to see this through?
Well, when I look at the COVID, because of COVID, I see there was a great opportunity to work with students in a one-on-one where they were basically sheltered from all the distractions. And so the students that I worked with, they reported back to me saying that they found that once they got the technical part out of the way, they found that this was a more conducive way for them to learn. They found that the environment, it wasn't like they didn't have to compare themselves to somebody else's work and how fast they were going. And I think that's a great opportunity for us, you know, once we have those devices, the networking. I think it's a great opportunity for us to establish either private schools, Afrocentric schools, even homeschooling. Homeschooling is really catching on in the States right now. And in Toronto, it's catching on. And, you know, like it can be done with, you know, 5 or 6 students, and the work is available there. And you know, and I would say that, you know, teaching is a tough job. Teachers have to do a lot today. And so sometimes it's not a job that's considered glamorous. And sometimes we do that by putting our emphasis on certain jobs, by saying, you know, like whether it's doctor, lawyer, engineer, what have you, surgeons, and we tend to focus on those and we direct people that way. But there are a lot of people who have passions and wanting to help people, and I think we have to recruit. We have to have a recruitment drive for teachers, because for me personally, the Black teachers made all the difference. I remember that the phys ed teachers, Howard Jackson and who was the other? Wayne Brothers. And gosh, every morning I would go in, you know, they would let me in early, and we would just talk and talk and talk and talk. And they would do this to a lot of the young Black men. And what an impact they made. And so, yeah, very, very key that we get more Black teachers, because that's going to make a huge impact on students.
There's a question here. Can we talk about the development of our own programs as well? We need to recognize that we're disseminated across the province.
Yes, well, you know, I mean, like, once again, I think that technology can be a way in helping us develop those type of programming, because technology can bridge the gap from where we're at to who we're helping. I was working with a couple of students in the Toronto area during the COVID, and I wouldn't have been able to do that, but you know, and they responded very well, because you know, so I think that we can use technology. We've had good systems in place before. It's sometimes, you know, what we do, we go for the new and shiny, and we dismiss the old. And sometimes we have to go back, you know, to our foundation. There was like, when I recall coming up, there was the schools and the community centers where we met, where we would have games, tutoring, all of these things. And the church was so important. And, you know, I mean, when you look at the churches out there, there's not a whole lot of young people there. Young in the church now is like 60 years old. And like, we need to have younger people in there, and, you know, and sometimes we have to change our ways, because if we're not changing to meet the needs of the people, then, and we want to keep it the old way without bending a little bit to let the younger ones in, they're not going to come see us. They're not going to come to us.
This, the question here, this COVID environment has also worked for me as an educator in an institution where I'm one of less than a handful of Black faculty. I no longer have to put my mask on from Monday to Friday. It has become easy for me to teach online.
Great point. Great point. Great. Yeah.
Is there any incentive to hire more Black teachers? Like, are the government pushing like more for more Black
No,
teachers, or?
I can't answer that, but I will say this. From a community point, we need to be pushing. I think that's one of the missing factors in what's going on. When I look at those who are marching in the streets right now, that's the public who's made this groundswell, and that's one of the reasons why the community's out there, and that's why the changes are happening. Or some of the changes are happening, or that's at least why people are aware. And so, power to those, and much gratitude to those for those people who are doing that, because it's bringing awareness. And I think that we need to start bringing awareness to all areas, education being important. It just can't be teachers speaking up. It just can't be educators speaking up. It needs to be the community in there speaking up and putting pressure on government and government officials. Just look at what happened there in Eastern Passage. They got their own school, and it's because that the community pushed. I mean, yeah, we know they didn't want to be in Cole Harbor. We know that, but it was the community.
Does anyone have links to the curriculum that is inclusive of our knowledge systems?
Gosh, I mean, there are some sites that I use, but it's hard to find, especially here in Canada. The states definitely have some, curriculum, but I think that's one of the things that we have to develop. Is we have to develop those things.
I would be willing to be part of a program with homeschooling, etc. It would actually make it possible for the funding, if the funding was available, for Wi-Fi, etc., to also reach students in rural and urban areas.
Yeah, for sure. And and I think that once a seed is planted and people get behind it, I really think that we can move mountains, but we need to start. We need to do something. I mean, once again, if I go back to the Black Lives Movement, if I go back to that, it was words became action. And when words became action, people started to stand up and take notice.
Nice.
Oh, and I will say this as well. One of the things that I found, working in the community, there were allies out there, whether it was cable companies, technology companies, who were very open to, in some way, helping and supporting the community, because for them, if they get more community on board, it helps their bottom line.
Is there some kind of association besides BEA for Black teachers?
I'm not. There might. I'm not aware. I'm not aware of. I'm not aware that there is. And the BEA has been around for over 50 years.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Conrad. I was going to say that's the place to go. I can't even imagine someone suggesting an organization in Nova Scotia. I'm sorry, 50 years plus. No, not in Nova Scotia. I can answer that unequivocally. There's the Nova Scotia Alliance of Black School Educators and NATSE, but we spawned after BEA was formed. They didn't form until 1970.
Wow.
Thank you.
And to add to that, community involvement. The community needs to get more involvement in organizations such as the DEA. Yeah, it's like any other organization. There are things you're gonna love and there's things you're not gonna like. But however, we've got to be of the mindset that what we're doing is for the future of our people, and that we need to get together for that. We need to put our petty differences aside, and we need to work for a common good. And so the more people who will support the BEA, the more people who will support the other Black organizations that we have, the better it'll be for us.
Conrad, I have a question for you. When we talk about the Afrocentric school, I heard a lot of people talking about it recently. I know you know this question that I'm going to ask, but what's the difference between an Afrocentric school versus an anti-oppressive school?
Well, let's just say this. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'll say that Afrocentric, for me, comes from a very positive point of view, where we're contributing, we're the curriculum, we're the content, and we teach from a perspective where, like if you can imagine a bicycle, this is how I look at it, a bicycle wheel. And at the core of that bicycle wheel is a person. And that person is a student. And on the outside where the tire is, the rubber is at, that's where the person wants to get. And we as educators, we become those spokes that connect the center of that wheel to the outside interest. And so Afrocentric to me is the person becomes the center, we become the center. We teach from a point of view where we're creators, we're people who think, we're people who contribute. And it's very important that when you walk into a place, if you can walk into many of the structures in Halifax and many of the schools that were built around here, and you can say, well, my uncle constructed that school, that they laid their hands on the school, and their labor went into that school. If we look at how many ideas were stolen from us, and how they made Nova Scotia, Canada, and the world better. I mean, we need to know those things, and that's where the center, I believe that's where the center comes from. But yeah, I mean, that's what I would just say, that Afrocentric scares a lot of people because we think that it's exclusion, but Afrocentric is inclusion. It's including. It includes. It's not a separation. It's not like you're forcing people out. It's bringing us in.
How do you get young people back into church? There is a war on Jesus. We as a people have only got here by the strength that Jesus gives us. As a coach, people get upset when I talk about Jesus. I know teachers can't talk about Jesus. I know social workers have a policy that they cannot talk about Jesus to clients. How do you get young people back? How do you get young Black youth back to the strength of Jesus? Then we can get them to church.
Well, I'll say it this way, because that's a very interesting question. I'll say it this way. We're all up against that. But however, if we walk in the light that we're to walk in, the people will come to us. And that it's not this legalist, type of life where you're putting people down. All Jesus ever talked about was love. And so when you talk about the love, and love can be hard, and love can be soft, and love can be easy, or love can be hard. I mean, yeah. But the fact that I'll make is if that's your center, and that is certainly mine, that goes back to the who I am. And I guarantee you, I've talked to students and, and I just presented myself for who I am. And I didn't have to talk to them about anything. They would come to me and they would say, man, what do you read? What do you, where do you get your foundation from? And on that, I can answer them.
I think this question here is in response to the question I just asked there. By recognizing that we are not and that have never been monolithic, there are many paths and faiths, and they should all be understood as equal value.
I'll say that I have nothing against someone else's faith. I have nothing against somebody else's diet. I have nothing against the car that somebody drives. And for me to express what it is that uplifts me, we should be in no way offended by that. And so if you appreciate people, you appreciate people and their differences. And so that's one of the things, you're right. We've never been monolithic, no. But the word university, if you dissected that word, we say that universities are the great learning institutes. But if you break the word down, uni, meaning one, the individual, me, the individual, you, uni. Versity comes from the word diversity, several, bringing several together, me, one, coming together, diversity. And so there will be differences. And so we can live with that because we've always lived with that. I think what happens is sometimes we listen to the world to say that we as Black people have to all be the same. I think the one thing is the same is that we have a struggle and we're looking for our footing here in the West, where we were uplifted from our own roots. And if we can find common ground on that, so that we make a better life for all of us, I think it becomes better. I mean, like I often see, whether it's I don't want to miss, but there's different nationalities who come here in Nova Scotia, and I see that they live together, they support each other, and when they get enough together, then they move out, they buy their own homes, but they support each other because what they're trying to do is say, okay, let's make us strong enough so that we become a force. And that's the one thing that I think that we've got to do. We have to become a force. If we don't become a force, we're going to be left on the outskirts for forever and a day.
Is there a push to teach more Black history within the school system that you know of?
No, I'm not aware of it. I mean, for sure, I mean, right now with, you know, the Black Lives Matter, I'm sure that schools are thinking on those lines, or, you know, they may be open to that. But, you know, I come from my point of view is that we need to take that up ourselves as well. Like, you know, if we, you know, have programs at places, you know, and we create the programs, I'm sure that the rest of the community would come to us, because what we have is something that the world wants. I mean, like, think of us as people. Like, when you look at the strength of our people, like, look at and how it's ingrained in the world. You get one or two of us together, and already a good many of white people are thinking that we're conspiring something against them. So they know we have the power. They do know we have the power, and that we just have to exercise it. But yeah.
Do you find that a certain number of teachers try to stream our Black students towards IPP, and are IPP programs more harmful or beneficial for our Black students?
I think when you look at the statistics that are publicly available through the Department of Education, you look at there's a higher degree of disproportionate number of African Nova Scotians in IPPs, and so that's a concern. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, I'll tell you a case in point. I was working with a student several years ago, and the student wanted to take academic math in grade 10. And so when he went into the program, the teacher said that he wasn't supposed to be in the class. There must have been a mistake. And the boy was disheartened by it. His parents were disheartened by it. And so the boy himself, he said, well, yeah, okay, if the other math is easier, I'll do it. And so I talked to his parents, and I talked to him and convinced him that, you know, he could do the math. And, you know, I mean, he'd have to work at it, but he could do it. But one of the things about it was that this young man wanted to go into profession. I can't remember what the profession was, but we went and we looked at what he would need for course requirements to get into Dalhousie. And one of the credits he needed was the academic math. And so if he listened to the teacher and allowed the teacher to push him through to that, and it wasn't IPP, by the way, but it was still steering him toward tracking him in a different direction, he wouldn't have been able to go into university. And I will say some teachers believe that they're saving our children by, you know, they're saving our children by not putting them through the rigors of the program and saving their self-esteem by putting them in a lower class. You know, like, you've often heard people say, you know, parents say that I never knew that my child was having challenges in a course until the marks came up, because the teacher was always telling me that the child was doing good. Good enough for who? You know, I mean, listen, I worked at the community college, and I had students in there where these are community college students, and some of them were, mid-20s and all, and their parents would come to the school to fight for the marks of the children who never did their work. So, it's not that our students are any less than any student out there, but I will say that the white parents know how to meander the system better than we do. And I think that, that's one of the things that we really need to work on too.
There's a note here. You need to have a speaker talk about Afrocentric education as it applies to Nova Scotia diaspora. Unless you have any thoughts on that, Conrad?
No, I agree with that. I agree with that, and that's not why I'm here. And because there are people out there who have expertise in that, in that field. And, and once again, I mean, that's where community comes together. That's where we come in and we support each other, because by supporting, everyone brings their own gifts. And as they bring their gifts, I bring my gift. We get a lot of energy out of that, right?
Yeah. So the system is designed to work against our Black kids?
Without a doubt. I mean, the system is designed to work against us. And so all of us. Yeah, for sure.
And how can we change that?
I think, the answer is in that question. How can we change that? And that's where it has to be we, because, we're a strong bunch when we get together, and, but we need to get together. And, the government may not always do it, but one thing about the government will go wherever the numbers are, and they'll cause change. Like, I remember back, I can't remember which Starbucks it was, but before the Black Lives Matter Starbucks, they had I think there was the Black person who wanted to use the washroom or whatnot, and they were adamant about it. You're not coming in here. You pushed them. They pushed them out and all. But when the Black Lives Matter happened, they were wearing Black Lives Matter working there. They were talking about making changes. And so there's a lot of business making changes because it's all about the money. And, I heard this, that one of the things that somebody had started, the Blackout Tuesday. Man, I think that's an excellent idea, because when you hit this economy in the pocket, they begin to listen.
There are so many problems that exist that we Black Scotian men are on the outskirts on. Housing First, apprentice coaching program, offenders reentry programs, construction safety programs.
Say again?
There are so many problems that exist that we Black Scotian men are on the outskirts on. Housing First, apprentice coaching program, offenders reentry programs, construction safety programs.
Yeah, I think it starts, it starts with us, and we need to get involved. We need to get involved. It's going to take the community to get involved. If you look at, when you look at the successes and the gains that were made historically, was because, we found ways to pool our energies together. And I think that still applies to today.
The response, we weren't brought here to be taught, we were brought here to work. I find it's rhetorical that to say we must get along and come together. Prom definition, the prom is us.
Rhetorical rhetoric.
I see. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You know, I mean, it is rhetorical. It is. It may be rhetoric, but
No, sorry, but he didn't finish asking the question. I was just saying,
oh,
helping him with the word that I put there.
oh, okay. Yeah, because I didn't see what the question was.
Yes, certainly.
The prom definition, the prom is us.
The black guy who's the player who knelt, remember him?
Oh, Colin Kaepernick. No, I never saw it.
That's why I never seen it before, so I stopped.
Yeah, don't want to touch that one. Yeah.
So Conrad, the facilitator or moderator didn't ask the question in full. I was typing it in response to the Afrocentric question. Do you mind if I just ask the question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I was saying it's rhetoric, not just you saying it, but, and I said, not just
Right.
tonight's speaker says this about us getting along. Black women are hateful to other black women, men are hateful to each other, and we have been saying that we must do this getting along for so long. Well, we cannot get along since and before the Afrocentric Learning Institute and its naming occurred with the Delmore Buddy Day Learning Institute. That only widened the divide. Who is going to lead this so-called coming together? The marches are great, but not the sole answer. And I'm saying that it's not just you saying we must get along.
Yeah.
Okay?
Got it. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's God, it's tough. I mean, like, you know, like, and I'm speaking from my own experience, working in the community. I mean, it's been uplifting, but it's also been really tough, emotionally, even physically, through stress that, you know, that comes against you in the community for the things that you try to do right. And sometimes you do want to give up, but I see a lot of hope because I've seen a lot of good things come out of the communities, and that's what I'll fixate on, is that we need to keep in the fight, and the longer we stay in the fight, I think at some point there will be a turning point. I really do. I really do. I mean, like, I haven't given up hope, and I won't give up hope. And yeah, it's always going to come back to us working together. And I think if we look at whether it doesn't business or anything, it's always, you try to pull people together, and government looks for more votes, a business looks for more money. And so it's trying to get people on the like-mindedness to be able to push forward and to do the things they have to do. And so at some point we have to, you know, we really must do that. And just for a minute, I think we have to put aside whatever differences we have and just look at what's the greater good for the majority of us. And I think we have to focus on that.
Go ahead. It would be nice to start a database of our professionals who can support our students and teach Afrocentric curriculum.
Yeah.
There's a note here.
Yeah.
Agreed, it starts with us. We've been conditioned for centuries to think lowly of ourselves and towards each other.
For sure.
How do we advocate for our participation?
You know, I think it goes back to one of the questions or statements that was there about us being monolithic, and sometimes I think we push that across too much, you know, and I'm in agreement with the person who said that, in that sometimes we become so rigid in our ways that we don't see the differences in others and how we can help us all. So yeah, I think that, you know, a part of it is that we're all going to have to, for lack of a better word, we're all going to have to suck it up just a little bit, because there's a generation behind us who are depending on us to move this thing forward.
So I think it's a response to how do we advocate for our participation? And not just tonight's speaker says this about us getting along. Black women are hateful to other Black women. Men are hateful to each other. And we've been saying we must do this, get along, well, get along, well, we cannot get along since Afrocentric Learning Institute, its naming the Buddy Day Learning Institute just widened the divide. Who's going to lead this so-called come together? Marches are great, but not the sole answer.
Hey, you know what's interesting about that though? Right now, all across the States and even here in Canada, there's this big push on to dismantle the monuments and statues out there that have people's names on them. Just a thought.
Need more teaching on financial literacy, ownership, business, and entrepreneurship.
We all agree. You know, being from the Preston area, I would say that 30 to 40% of the people in the Prestons in, you know, 40 years ago owned their own businesses, whether they were, you know, doing trucking, whether they were farming. And that was the value of the community, and it provided jobs for the community.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here and mention that the government gives us minimal funding to keep us bowing and scraping. If anything is to be done, we need to come together, as Conrad says, and do more for ourselves. Ownership is power.
Yeah, kudos to that. And
Who's going to lead the coming together in our community of Black Nova Scotians?
I think we each lead it. I think it's up to each of us to take a role, and I think leaders will be developed. Turn me on to Miles Monroe. He was talking about leadership. He said that it's not leaders who seek followers. It's followers who seek leaders. And that is so true. I think that in the time of tragedy, trauma, you know, in conditions such as this, there will be someone who takes this forward, and we're going to gravitate towards that person. That's what I don't know. I just have that in me, and I think that's going to happen. I think our leader is just going to come up through the situation.
Can we commit to advocate for funding, resources? We need equity hiring practices and equity participation practices. What was said about us on the outskirts is powerful. We were placed geographically on the outskirts to be denied resources.
Yeah, I had a thought on that. Was that you know, one of the things that that irks me is when we go to the government for funding, the government will say, they'll say to us, you know, they'll talk about being fiscal, responsible. They'll talk about where, you know, where's the money going? You don't have enough people for this, and they hold on to the money as if it's their money, forgetting that we're taxpayers. And as taxpayers, we have a right to demand, you know, what it is that we need in order to run our communities. And I think that if we become more politically involved, I think that that's gonna amount to something. I believe that anyway.
And last note, I think nobody is going to lead, just my opinion. And I mean only in the bridging this divide of our communities, especially around the areas of education. I got to have the spotlight, and we did it first, and we are the best. This I don't think is an Afrocentric perspective. So when I say I don't think anyone is going to accept the leadership role of this magnitude, because it's been exaggerated, excavated these past few years.
Can I just say, I'm talking about the community of our Black communities in Nova Scotia, and there's a long divide, and it's getting wider, and the existence of those two entities has only made it graver. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, who do you think possibly, Conrad, as the speaker, could take on that leadership role, and do you think someone will? Because we say, I will, we hope someone will, but who will? And do you think someone will? And there must be someone, because we just keep saying it and talking about
it. You know, I'll just say that you know, like I was saying before, I believe that a leader is going to rise up based on the situation. I think a leader is going to rise up. When we look at the leaders that, you know, we would have had in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even in the 80s, and we still have a lot of leaders right now, and they come out of duty, out of necessity. And so I believe that a leader will rise up, because we can't continue to live with this, like, you know, this way, I would say. And like, yeah, I'm just hopeful that, I think that we just got to maintain, we got to continue to maintain, continue to build. And I think the leader will come. I really do. I don't think that person has, I really don't think that person has exposed themselves to us as of yet. But I think the leaders is going to come.
Is there a statement here? Absolutely. Colonizer roles. The vote. I remember years ago, members of the Black community informed the whole community of Black voters. They even went to people's home and drove them to the ballot box. Put our own candidates.
Yep, agreed.
I'm not commenting.
Any more points or statements anyone wishes to make before we wrap up tonight? Conrad, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I just, I thank the audience for the questions, for the conversation, and that, it's obvious that we have work to do, but it's also obvious that we have a lot of gifted people out there who not all are being respected for the things that they do and the things that they've done. And I think that, you know, that we've got to be kinder to one another. And I think that, you know, because the generation behind us is really, they're looking up to us to make the move. And I think if we make the move, I think they'll come forward. A lot of young people feel disengaged. They feel, you know, they feel isolated. They feel like we're pushing them away. And I think we got to create opportunity for young people to take this on.
Okay, Conrad. I heard a lady in the background said she doesn't want to comment, but I'd really like to hear the comment because I think for me it'd be valuable because she kind of laughed and she said she didn't want to comment on it, but I would really like to hear the comment about us putting in our own candidate and getting a vote and those kind of things.
Oh, I would love for that to happen. I would love for that to happen. You know, I mean, like we have black candidates in there now, and you know, I mean, yeah, you know, we all have our, you know, we can agree or disagree on you know, what the person has done and what the people have done, but I think that we need to put more pressure on. And I think that our vote is going to speak loud. I really do. I really think our vote speaks. I really do.
Conrad, I think Mr. Dayton was asking the female who mentioned that to respond as well, just before you sign off.
Yes, please.
I was just saying, I know of 2 Black women who will be running in the upcoming municipal election, one in the Cole Harbor area and one in the area of Fall River, not Fall, Timberley, sorry, Timberley.
Oh,
And
great.
so when
Well, that's good.
things are on
Let's
the
get them in
ballot, I hope to see people support them and in their campaign supporting them.
So you said Fall River, and what's the other?
Not Fall River, Timberley.
Timberley
who's running-
and where?
And Cole Harbor.
Who's running in
Okay.
Cole Harbor?
Well, they haven't announced their candidacy because that takes a minute for them to officially announce their candidacy. But they will, you will find a person, a Black woman from that area who is running.
And when
Iona
is the-
Stoddard
when
is
the
running in
election?
Timberley.
Yeah, Iona Stoddard is
So
running.
that name is well known. I don't know who's running in Cole Harbor, but I guess we'll keep our eyes peeled as soon as they find out, because don't hold that stuff in. We need to know now.
Oh, excellent.
She hasn't registered. I don't think she's registered her formally her papers, to run. But that is coming. I know of a fact for a fact that is coming. So hopefully,
I'd like to say, as Mr. Grosse said, that I guess we can all disagree and agree with certain things that they're saying or what they ain't saying, but I think I would just like us all to support them from the beginning, and then we can move on from there.
Good point.
Any more questions? Any more statements? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening on behalf of Nova Scotia Black Men's Health League, along with Nova Scotia Black Women's Alliance. Thank you very much for all your talk, your information, and sharing with us. And I'd like to thank you again, Conrad. You had a great speaker, and we hope we'll do it again.
Okay, thank you,
everybody.
Anybody here